Hi guys, this is Collage Collagraph part 2. In part 1 I made some collage papers for my Collagraph print, and in this part I'm going to actually put it all together and create this print. So we're going to build the plate, use all the great collage papers we've created in part 1. Enjoy the video, and if you have any questions about any of the techniques, please feel free to ask me. I always list all my materials in a description, so you should have all the information there, but if you do need some more help, I'm always happy to answer your questions. I have this absolutely enormous box from the PlayStation, basically using it as my substrate for this Collagraph. So I've got a huge range of my collage papers. They are all dry today, so I'm happy to cut them up and stick them on. But before I do that, I wanted to, I've got a lot more of those sticky labels, A4 labels, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a textured background, which my friend Bob Cornelis has shared with me what he does in his Collagraphs, which are fabulous. Go and check him out on Instagram, Bob Cornelis artist. He showed me this technique and I am really dying to try it out. So what I'm going to do first is, I guess I'm just going to cut out some random shapes, labels. He doesn't use these labels. I'm just using them because I am lazy. They are super easy to stick things with. So this is purely just to create some interesting textures. So this edge here is obviously going to create me a border when I'm printmaking. I might actually keep this. This is a really good shiny paper that's got shiny and matte surfaces on both sides. Really useful actually for potential collage making. So I'm going to keep that. So that already has created me a really interesting edge. Might just do a straight edge this time. And they can just overlap, so that will in fact might even create something interesting here. The ink might just get caught here. There's no particular intention here. I'm just looking for some interesting textures and shapes. I'm sorry this is white on white, but I think the two whites are a little bit different, so you should be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, now that I've got lots of new interesting shapes, I'm going to add my Collagraph collages, and they are all very random. So I'm just really kind of building lots and lots of layers. It might all change, but I'm trying to sort of put contrasting layers together. Again, not a huge amount of intention here, just a play. Without boring you to death, I'm just going to really speed this up just to show you really in a nutshell all the layers that I've added, that you saw that I created the collage papers in the previous video. So bear with me, I will just speed it through and then I'll show you what happened next. So as you will see when I progress with this plate, you will see that actually I'll end up with something really different. So the fact that I'm sticking these shapes on first and then putting the collage papers on second doesn't actually mean that they will transpire in my final print. I will create a proof print first, I will reassess, and I might really change the plate. That's why printmaking is actually so much fun, because you really can change things. You are not restricted to what your plate is like the first time. And some of these collage papers can prove to be quite difficult to print. They could be maybe too deep, too rough. So I will often find that out once I have a proof print, and I could either try to remove them, or I will try to smooth them out with some pastes or gels. Likewise, if I don't like a certain pattern, I can always glue over it as well, or smooth it out with some paste and gels. I've jumped a little bit here, a bit forward, so you don't get bored. I just basically stuck a load of more those collage papers and built up the texture, really just covering as much as possible. That's the idea. That's my idea for this print anyway. Of course, it can be something completely different. It could be a landscape, it could be something a little bit more realistic, but I really just fancied doing something like this. So I am now quite happy with what is going on. I'm going to just cut this whole plate out just to give it some shape. Obviously, I want this to fit onto a piece of paper. I'm limited to the size of my press, which is an A3 paper size press, so I might actually have to take out the press bed out of the press to place this plate onto the press, so it might be a little bit tricky. So I'm trying to just make it a little bit smaller. You can see the base of my press. I'm just matching it just to see if it can fit. So it can just about fit, which is good. But yes, so I'm just giving it some interesting shape, just cutting it little bits out. Finally, I'm ready to proof print. So I'm using here Akua black ink, and I'm just applying the ink with a piece of plastic. And it's a big job because the plate is huge and it's going to take quite a lot of time to do. All the bits that I didn't get with my plastic shaper, I am just pushing the ink in with a paintbrush. Once I start wiping the ink off with the Scrim, you can really get excited about the plate and see what potential it has. Once the shapes are being revealed, you can see some problematic areas where it might just come off a little bit, but that's absolutely fine. It can always be reattached, reglued later. I can also print it like this. Sometimes just putting it through the press might stick it on, as long as you obviously don't rub it up against it. If there are some bits that are missed, I can see that the ink hasn't quite got in there. I'm just retouching it with a bit of paintbrush. This is a real fun part, as you can really start seeing the plate and the beauty of it. So I'm quite excited to print it now. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to print it. So as you can see, I've had to take the plate out of the press, and I am sticking down all the bits that are sort of sticking out. I had to take it out of the press because obviously it's too big. So I'm just placing my wetted 300 GSM watercolour paper on top. And of course, not forgetting newsprint so I can protect my blankets from getting wet. And I normally have at least a couple. Blankets on top, and now I'm slotting it into the press. So as you can see, I couldn't really do that with it being in a press because the rollers would be over it and I wouldn't be able to get it in. So I'm just adjusting it. I'm going to have it quite tight. And here we go. Let's put it through. I am putting it through twice. I've just adjusted a little bit more and bring it one more time. And again, I'm going to have to take the whole bed out in order to take the print out. And here we go. I'm ready to reveal. This is such a treat. Ooh, there's a little bit of leak in between the collages. I'm going to have to take care of that. But yeah, cool. So overall impression of the plate is, I find it interesting. I'm pleased with it, but still got some bleeding going on, so I need to take care of that. Some of the collage papers haven't quite come out the way I expected them to, But this is really, really good exercise to do this proof print, study it and see what I need to do to the plate. And here is where I'm starting to do things to the plate. So I am ripping bits off using a scalpel knife, and it's just to create some dark areas. I'm also just cutting things out completely. It's a really thin card, so it's quite easy to do, sometimes not intentionally. But I kind of decided to go for some vertical lines. It's quite a vertical design. Initially, it was going to be a lot of cross lines, different shapes, but I have decided to unify this and make it sort of a very vertical type of position. So these lines are just, I guess, I'm trying to unify it by creating these lines and just cutting bits out. Some of the bits I didn't like, I'm also ripping them off. On the left-hand side, I got rid of quite a lot of stuff here because I didn't like it in my print. So I'm hoping this is going to work a little bit better. I'm also adding some new areas here, and this I've jumped ahead a little bit because I didn't want to bore you to death with more detail. I'm adding here some silver tape, aluminium tape, sticky tape, which is really good because it's going to wipe the ink off clean, which is going to be a very light area. So as you can see, I've ended up with a very stripy, vertical design. And here I'm adding just a bit of acrylic gloss media, and then I've added some Micaceous iron oxide. So I've added some light areas and dark areas just with a paintbrush. And I guess I'm trying to create some more blocky kind of areas to contrast with all these patterns. I've got lots of crazy patterns going on. So I think I'm just basically muting them a little bit by applying a bit of acrylic medium. At this point, it's very difficult to say if this plate is going to work or not, and it's a bit of a gamble, but the whole process was fun. Okay, I decided to go for a third print, so I have done a combination of burnt umber, and I've mixed some Paynes grey with some phthalo blue, which gave me sort of more loose consistency of the ink and not a really nice deep rich color. So this is my color combination, and I'm also going to put these masks on top when I'm printing, but also I'm going to do some chincolet using a starch powder and some water. I haven't done this chincolet method. This was advised to me by Bob Cornelis, a friend in America, a fellow artist. So I'm going to try it out. I'm really excited to try it out. I've got some lovely chincolet paper here, Japanese paper. It's really absorbent, so I'm going to use that. And yeah, let's see. I am going to create my masks. So just placing them in various places. I'm creating white spaces which will sort of be then semi-covered by my chincolet papers. Also, the byproduct of masking is getting some amazing collage papers. Check this out. How cool is that? Ah, priceless. I'm going to keep this and I'm going to use this. It's just gorgeous. I haven't recorded the print going through the press, but here is the result with the mask, the white masked area. Okay, so I've got my chincolet papers. I have a fine mist water spray that I'm going to use to spray these papers. I blot dry them with the towel because you don't want them to be too wet when you sprinkle over the starch powder. So I'm going to use wheat starch powder, which I bought from London Book Arts, and I've got some of this very useful kitchen accessory, which is, I believe, a cocoa powder shaker. You will of course need to shake the excess off. I didn't quite film it, but yeah, you have to do it. And I'm going to place my lovely Shinclay papers. In this case, we're facing the starch powder side down because we're gluing it to the paper. The paper's actually on the bed, the press bed. I have slightly inked up my plate one more time. I will try to place it as accurately on top as possible. Beautiful. It's a bit sticky. Okay. So far so good. Obviously all the wet spaces are gone now because I have but I've got to say the Shinclay looks quite good, quite promising. So the lighter parts that I masked out are still visible because I've inked up very lightly second time. So that's created a nice texture. And the green created a sort of subtle effect. So just to show you, so Shinclay has glued on super nice, and all the bits that I masked out previously, I did want to create some kind of additional texture, so you can see the bits that were lighter before. That was the idea. Yeah, very interesting. Super cool. So I have to say, this Shinclay method is pretty awesome. I have done lots of different Shinclay methods. This paper is wonderful. And yeah, super cool. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. It's a long one. It was a bit of a journey with this Collagraph, but fun. And forgot to mention the Shinclay papers were called washi papers, and I got them on Amazon. You can probably get them in most art shops. Anyway, subscribe and like and come back. Thank you.